There it is. I know why now. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. The microphone has been turned off. Oh my God. So it's like, no matter what. Oh man. So we're just gonna go from here and hope that people come back to the stream and realize that my microphone is on. See, I mean, there's always something for those of us who are technologically impaired in some way. And I talk to many people, and sometimes Zoom is even like an issue for people because they're just not practiced at it. And I've had to teach myself all of these things along the way. And there's so many pieces to link together into one framework here that I often do like lose sight of the thing. So now the microphone is on. I see what the problem is, and I'm pretty sure. Oh, here we go. I think, okay, yes, thank you. I see you guys now because the microphone was off. It was a really easy fix, and I thought I had turned it off or turned it on when I went live, so apparently not. So here we are. It's okay. My beginning monologue wasn't that exciting anyway, so hopefully it doesn't influence people in the recording either. So so for those of you who are interested, here is the flyer for the Reiki Healing Attunement event. I am offering a healing attunement to a group every day from yesterday up until the 21st, which is the spring equinox. And so healing attunements are, and Reiki attunements in general are very powerful. They're initiation. And what this does is through the actual performance or the process of doing the attunement, and for those who are practicing Reiki and understand what I'm talking about, there are a lot of symbols that are involved, and it's very ceremonial. And remember that Reiki, at least in the type of energy work that Reiki represents from its cultural standpoint, is Japanese. And so the form is very important, and the nature of calligraphy and the visual representation of abstract ideas through more symbolic language rather than, the Western idea of our alphabet. So the form and the symbols are important, and the attunement is a series of these things put together in a very ceremonial format. And what it does, the healing attunement in particular, is like a template that is energetically channeled in and installed basically for whatever healing you are working on, right? Because this is a big part of the Virgo energy, is the healing, the process of healing, right? And that is a physical process, right, of your body, and your systems, your anatomy, your physiology, your energetic systems, moving and organizing, reorganizing, reconstituting themselves so that you can build up to a perfection of form. And the form and perfection of form in the highest version of the Virgo archetype is really to be a vessel for Source to inhabit. And it's a practice that you're never done with. That's the kind of idea about it, is that you create and bring to fruition and maturity some aspect of the self that is meant to be the new creation or the unity after polarity. And that's Virgo is about the blending of duality as opposed to the strict dichotomy of Gemini. And both of those signs, of course, are ruled by Mercury. And we're going to talk about Mercury because Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde leading up to this full moon. Of course, it's in Libra, but it will come back into its home territory of Virgo during this retrograde time. So in the meantime, we are doing this together. So you sign up. And if you're interested in this, you can send an email to catalystenergies@gmail.com. It's in the description box below and in the subject line right here, 21 days Reiki healing attunements, and then I send you the rest of the information. Or you can go to catalystenergies.net. It's right on the homepage. There's way more information there for you, and you can sign up through the website. Although it's been a little wonky lately, I have to tell you that if you don't have like your browser or your operating system of Windows signed into your email client, it's going to want to do that. So just keep that in mind. Either way, plenty of opportunities to get more information and to sign up. And even if you don't know about it already, guess what? Reiki operates out of our conventional time and space paradigm. So you're still getting access to the full template of the healing journey, even if you didn't start on September 1st. So that's that. And just to keep in mind, might as well just go through it all while we can right now, and then we'll get into the meat of it, as people are finding themselves, kind of trickling back in perhaps. So Catalyst Classroom, the second session is up for those subscribers through Subscribestar. And we're talking about Chiron during this theme here, the Rainbow Road. And so this is specifically about the astrology of Chiron in the houses, in the signs, how to read it. We look at the constellation of Centaurus and the fixed stars that are involved there. And then look at a couple demo charts just to get an idea. This is, the way and the benefit of reading Chiron in the chart. And also next session is going to be about all of the Starseed relevant connections to the current transiting Chiron, which is in Aries right now, and which is relevant because of all the Libra energy that is coming, right? This is the axis of polarity with Aries, which is Libra. So you can see how these themes are going to be very relevant in the coming months. And so right now, leading up to the equinox, the sun at 0 degrees Libra, which will be in conjunction with Mercury at 0 degrees Libra in its retrograde, way more of a message coming in through Mercury as the messenger. Wow. It's this time period with the Reiki attunements is something that we all can commit to, that is a commitment to our own healing, our own journey, our own transmutation. And Chiron as the Rainbow Road is this experience of true compassion through our own suffering as a means to spiritualize or get to a more spiritualized consciousness, and the bridge between Saturn and Uranus. So if you're interested in this information, and it's all accessible to you whenever you are a subscriber, you can go to Subscribestar, which is linked in the description box below. And since we are going to be talking about our full moon briefly in Pisces, just to let you know, Pisces, and it's still Virgo as well, sun, moon, and rising people, but Pisces, the full moon's going to be in your sign on the 10th. So if you're interested in getting a reading, the sale rate is offered to you this month since the full moon will be in your sign. So again, you go to catalystenergies.net homepage, there'll be options for booking, and you get the sale rate, 30-minute or 60-minute recorded reading. Okay, I think I have all of the promotional stuff out of the way so you guys know what's going on. And of course, if you're on the email list, you get all of this stuff anyway. So, all right, let's check in with the stream here and make sure it's all good. All right, we can hear you now. Yay! So welcome, Megan. Welcome, VZ. I appreciate you guys being here very, very much. And I am grateful for your participation, too, in the Reiki Healing Attunement. So, wow. Boy, the group so far is just like, yesterday was just this very powerful kind of setting of intention in a lot of ways, and people are still kind of getting added into the mix here as we're getting started. And right out the gate, it is going right into, okay, where are your feels? Where is that attachment and loss? And of course, this is really appropriate for a moon in Scorpio right now, right? Scorpio and the 8th house being that area of intense emotions and all of the energy that goes along with attachment and loss, which is, all kinds of feels of betrayal, broken trust, and just sadness, right? I mean, a breakup is a breakup is a breakup. And regardless if it's mutual, if it is understood, there's still feelings here. And this is what I picked up on almost immediately before I even sat down to the attunement is really strong tapping into this energy. And it came right out the gate. So I'm excited to share to the participants the full transmission, right? The reading and the crystal grid that went along with it, and my own impressions during the Reiki attunement. So that is coming. But let's take a look here. I want to show you the reading from Monday. I feel a real strong urge to really review some things, and I do want to talk about one thing that did come to mind this morning before broadcasting, just kind of letting my Sagittarian creative visualization kind of just go where it wanted to go. And it brought back a very specific type of thing that was related to this energy. And here's the reading from Monday. And of course, if you were privy to this, if you watched it, you process it, then you already have been feeling it all week. And you know that the healing attunement event is so much tied into this this pattern here, right? This template itself in a moment. And you see that this is the art of alchemy, or temperance, or number 14 in the tarot. And it's the Sagittarius card, right? It is the integration of polarity through some sort of catalyzing event that creates something new. And which is truly the definition of alchemy. So the Sagittarian, often has the philosopher, the dreamer, the wisdom keeper, the teacher, the alchemist, right? And we all have this in our chart somewhere. We have Sagittarius. And so the fact that we're going to have a first quarter moon, which is always this kind of, I got to restructure, reorganize something that I have felt resistance or friction with since the new moon, there's this kind of how do I reorganize myself? How do I take this, or how do I perceive this resistance that I am feeling, and utilize that energy to, in fact, integrate, what I am resisting, right? How do I find that place, and where is the energy to do that? And I think that the first quarter moon tomorrow, along with the mystic rectangle that we looked at, and we will look at it again, that is tomorrow as well, is just kind of what do I do? And I think a lot of it has to do with a need to examine the intensity of our emotions in kind of a raw way. And, a lot of ways to do that will come through in the dream state. A lot of times we will suppress those things, but they will come out in the dream state. And this idea that many people continually, it's growing, will feel more and more of the resistance and can't really ignore it anymore. And with Mars in Gemini, it's really the best use of that very dynamic energy in a sign that we could really cut ourselves off from our emotions and just really act on the dichotomy of the polarization in itself, as opposed to sparking the fire that we know will be the alchemical fire. The fire that you cook on is not the same fire that is right when you start things, or even the combust fire of Leo, right? And Venus, God bless Venus, right? I'm ready for her to go into Virgo. But that's because, the energy, the embodied combust solar energy has just been so powerful. And when we look at the space weather, which I am going to, let's transition to that. I just wanted to show you kind of this idea here that healing, the split within ourselves, the two worlds, or the two aspects of our mind and our consciousness, the two sevens that are reversed down here about patience and taking care of the details, right? Even when we feel as if we are, pushing that rock up the hill or not making any headway, it's to realize that it's underneath, it's within ourselves that the real work has always been happening. But it eventually is, going to reach this point of offering, of surrender, the harvest, truly, when we get to the equinox. So the thing I wanted to show about the space weather as we go along here, make sure that we can actually, there we go. So this is the chart. We'll get there. We'll get to the chart. The first thing I want to show here, we're just looking at the Schumann in general right now, and it has started to get louder, right? The space weather started to calm down. Like the sun is not currently flaring like crazy right now, but like it's flaring, but the intensity of it is starting to drop back down to the C class. There is a large coronal hole. I'm going to show it to you. We're going to get more solar wind. It's already kind of like on its way, and I think that's what you're seeing here a lot of times is the way that when the Schumann amplifies from the Earth herself, when that amplification is coming from more of an organic expansion or the heart of the planet changing or increasing the volume of this, it does feel less intense in when it happens. It's more of a pleasant kind of like, oh wow, like it's, when your own field is bolstered and like you get you go and you have this really awesome and luscious bodywork session that like opens everything up, or like when you're in Shavasana after like 90 minutes straight of some sort of physical yoga and you're just like, oh, I'm so full, right? And your whole body's buzzing. That's more when the Schumann amplifies. It feels like that when it seems more organic. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. What do you guys experience, those of you who are tracking this? So it did get louder, and it is seeming to get louder, and the quality of it seems to have a correspondence as well. So the reason I'm bringing this up in relation to Venus, especially because she's in late Leo now, right? These are the galactic degrees for Atlantis. This is like the culmination of that solar energy is late Leo, right? Like reaching full saturation in a lot of ways of that energy. There was a CME that released that was really, really big off the other side of the sun towards Venus. I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have. According to the official story, Venus doesn't have any kind of electromagnetic or atmospheric magnetic field or magnetosphere to bounce off of it, but it's clearly going to have an impact on the interplanetary magnetics, and Venus, in these late degrees of Libra, and the sun, just bursting at it. It almost feels like that it's going to be hitting, Venus, and we will still get some sort of experience of it, but maybe not to the extent that if it was like blasting us, right? Maybe it will. I'm not sure. I just feel like it's a big part of this story now that energy is going to be somehow integrated very much in our everyday physical sense-based feels, especially when Venus comes into Virgo, which also is going to be happening during this week. So we do see the Schumann is active. For me personally, it's been a rough week, and many other people have talked about, especially physical pain, or depression, or just exhausted, and it's starting to lighten up, just like the solar weather for now is starting to lighten up. But again, you can see when these Schumann blasts are coming, it usually means there's more to come. And like I said, solar wind is on its way. This is a big coronal hole, isn't it? And so it's definitely going to make its way to us, and it's already starting to. Actually, if I show you all of the solar wind traits and activities, right? When you see this blue line kind of drastically go from top to bottom, it's called the phi angle flip, and it's pretty good indication that there is starting to be a magnetic impact from some sort of solar wind or plasma. And even though the solar wind speed has dropped, it's probably going to start coming back up here any minute now, over the weekend for sure. So that's something to keep in mind and to be aware. It's not meant to be scary. You can even see that the magnetosphere and the KP index has really started to mellow out, showing that the magnetosphere itself is stable as well. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm going to get into the chart here, and then I want to tell you a story before we get fully into the astrology, because that's what I do. I am the storyteller, right? This is one of the ways that Sagittarius people really, the reason they seem to be able to it's because of this big picture perspective a lot of time with the Sagittarian element, which is truly very relevant coming into this lunar part of the cycle with the moon in Sag, and especially squaring the sun in Virgo. Is a lot of mutable energy, right? It's malleable, it is changeable, it's flexible, and it depends on if you're a mutable sign or you have a lot of fixed energy, or what, that you have, you know, respond to those things. But yeah, it has its benefit of the flexibility and the stretching of the boundary in a lot of ways. And so being able to tell the story, right? The narrative, the mythology, you know, these are strong ninth house and Sag energy, but the narrative and the mythology and the story gets its meaning from the 8th house in Scorpio. Our feelings that we invest in and realize are at the center of this actual experience of meaning and philosophy and religion and belief, right? These are, again, Sagittarian and ninth house energy. So right now, with the moon having already crossed over the south, her own south node, in Scorpio, and in Scorpio, we are really addressing the raw and just pure feeling that is the currency of relationship and power, right? And it's important that we do so, and that we really give ourselves the space to feel it, to identify maybe, you know, where it's coming from, to have some courage to sink a little bit deeper into that experience, not to be overtaken by it. And certainly with the moon in a trine to Neptune and Pisces, that's very easy to do. And we'll talk about some ways maybe to mitigate that. But also to realize that when you're able to have a structural knowledge of what flows underneath the surface, right? When you really have allowed yourself to sink into the abyss with some courage and some sense of real faith in the relationship to source, or the relationship to whoever, right? That's the thing about Scorpio, is that it shows us all of the potential we can be together, right? The return on our investments into cooperation, into communion, into love, into trust, right? And to not be necessarily deterred by the possibility of betrayal, right? You have to take a risk in these areas, but there's real consequences, and real feelings of betrayal are very difficult to get out or get to, you know, float back to the surface. And that may be what is initiating, or the fire burning at the center of you may be coming from those feelings. And that's something that has to be really strongly and honestly appraised. And I think that the healing attunements are just, it's so beautiful to be able to commit to that template being there, and just knowing that it will rearrange everything around and within you in order to resonate with that template. And the more you do it, which is why we're doing it for 3 weeks, right? It's something that will become more than just a routine or even a habit. It will be part of you at that point. But the moon in Scorpio, it's difficult, right? So the story I want to tell is, I was thinking about something very practical, right? Such a Virgo thing, about how to bring the two sides together. And there's a lot, and being a body worker for 17 years now, we embody these habits, and vice versa, right? When we allow our bodies to find that same type of balance through various things. This is why all kinds of like hatha, physical yoga, kundalini yoga, anything with the body, martial arts, tai chi, qigong, walking, exercising, swimming. But the thing that really stuck out, and because I was thinking about, I was like, man, I'm really juggling a lot right now. And I was like, oh yeah, juggling, actual juggling is an incredible practice for this, right? If you really want to get to that kind of, hey, I can I can actually manage and balance not only the two sides of myself, but the two sides are managing multiple into this like geometric pattern. Because if you look at someone juggling, especially if they're really juggling like more than three, getting into those real master level. And I used to, when I was still living in Portland, I was I was with a group of people who really went into like clowning and juggling and fire dancing and things like that. So, I had some really good mentors around me and inspiration just in general. So juggling is one of those things. I was like, oh yeah, juggling. Well, the way that I learned to juggle, truly, because you just have to do it, right? You just, again, here's that Virgo thing. You just have to sit down and do it. And you do it over and over and over and over and over until the muscle memory is entrenched in your neural pathways, right? In your body. And the reason I did that, and the reason I had the opportunity to really just focus on that without getting too caught up in the results is because, strangely enough, after in 2013, after that was the third of 3 consecutive Burning Man events that I had attended with these this troupe of people actually coming, which is so interesting to think about that connection now. But coming back from that event, which by far was the best of the 3, right? Because you're really starting to get into a groove of like, oh, this is how you actually do this, right? The first couple times you're just like, what in the fuck is this, right? Like, it's just I was mind blown, right? And I'd been to plenty of festivals. I'd been on Fish Tour when I was younger. Like, it wasn't like this was, I went and saw Fish at Big Cypress in 2000. Like, that was, and this was something I had never encountered in my young life up to that point. So coming back, we were glowing. And I came back and my dog was really, really sick and died a week later. It was awful. And it was such a profound, oh my gosh, everything about that situation. I don't have time to go into it right now. Everything about that situation was just so like, wow, this was an initiation on multiple levels and coming from multiple locations. And of course, in 2013, 2012 hit and, the clock ticked over to the next like hour, right? And so it was all a whole new ball game at that point, right? The establishment of the sacred timeline, I think, was really brought into like, this is what's happening now. And so everything had to start getting brought and pulled and attracted in. And some of it, a lot of it between 2012 and I would say to 2015 or 16 was just gnarly. So many people died in my life. All of my dogs were gone by then. Father-in-law, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was my last remaining grandparent and, was the only one that I really had like a long-term relationship because the others had passed away either before I was born or when I was really young. So it was gnarly. And, it was in that first experience that really we were not ready for. That the only thing I knew what to do, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to just learn to juggle. Because I didn't have any work, I'd been on the farm all summer and, going back for work in the winter for the harvest, right? Northern California, Southern Oregon, you know what the deal is. And so there was nothing that I had to distract me. I hadn't fully come into like really full-time work, body work. That was really where I got my chops, is working in a spa and then working at Brighton-Bush. But so I was in this period and I was like, I don't know what else to do. And so I was just like, this is all I know what to do. Like, I just started juggling and that's where I learned. And eventually, I can pick up juggling and it's just like, oh, I know how to do this now, right? This is one of those ways to utilize these experiences, maybe of intense loss or grief or any of the feelings that are going along with those kind of Moon and Scorpio feelings right now, to find that space and just kind of use that energy or just sit with that energy and use something that or do something that is going to establish balance within you. Maybe try something new, pick up a new skill. And this is why the Reiki attunement is so healing attunement is so powerful in this format, because everybody is kind of establishing for themselves, something that they want to bring back into their life, or to bring into their life that will establish balance. So it doesn't have to be juggling, obviously. That's just the example that came through as guidance, right? And I wanted to share that with you. And the things I learned about death and my closeness to those 8th house energies in those 2 years is, I learned more, and I opened to myself more in those timeframes than any of the graduate degrees I attempted to pursue during that time and was pushed away from. Just mind-blowing. One day I will tell stories about the things that I experienced during those times, that just a whole new level of consciousness, just like our new moon in Virgo, right? Setting the intention around that. So I'm being brought back a lot to those experiences, because that's really where I was starting to open up. So it's interesting. And I know that, we may be facing a lot of very distinct, and we already are, right? Loss, real loss. And people around us are going to be feeling it too. So it's important to be aware of our boundaries, but also be compassionate, realize the places in our lives where we've gone through these events already, and that others are now waking up to it, and they are going to be profoundly changed and grow and mature as a result. And Starseed mission, right? Especially if it's related to more of the social identity and expression stuff, is very much part of this. And, being part of this ground crew in this first wave, because the second wave is going to be angry. And that you take anger into that space, and it has not been surrendered to something more alchemical, I guess, in terms of your own growth and your own healing. It goes to dark ass places. And I think this is the moon in Sag. It's going to be, strangely enough, is going to be a kind of a little bit of that's the dark place this can go to. I hadn't felt that before. And has a lot to do, I think, with the unveiling or an unmasking type of experience, right? A very rapid and precision-oriented snatching away of the veil, so to speak. So, how are you guys doing out there? You just listening? Do you have any questions? Anything going on for you? I'm just really stoked that the microphone is on now. So I feel bad that people probably went their way, but that's okay. It's okay, right? So here is today's chart. I think it's worth just kind of launching into with today's chart. So like I said, moon in Scorpio. So it's going to square Saturn. It's going to square Venus, right? Venus is in Leo. Saturn is in Aquarius. And if, and Taurus, Uranus and Taurus, honestly, it's going to create some measure of a grand square, actually, if you think about it. So, and it's really about, the emotional aspect and the capacity to kind of acquire this knowledge of what's going on under the surface that is really the most beneficial, I would say, or you're going to find yourself with the least resistance to where Neptune in Pisces is, right? Just as let it wash over you and allow that structural knowledge within your own emotional landscape, your intuition, and how you feel about what you are knowing as a result of this type of penetrating vision, to be part of just the cathartic purification at a soul level, right? Neptune and Pisces, and not just your soul, but everyone's soul. I think that's again, just because it's a trine doesn't mean it's going to feel good. It just means that the energies of Pisces and Scorpio through Neptune and the moon, it's going to be lots of feels around this right now, is just going to be very seamless and powerful and a strong current in a lot of ways. So it may also be a horrifying, oh my God, right? Knowing and feeling and beholding what is down there is maybe enough to just what's the word I'm looking for? Just sweep it all away within every level of your being and the collective unconscious as well. And that's the thing. When you are doing the work, like we are in the healing attunement, it will have an impact on the collective's unconscious state and kind of the transcendental state of all of us together. So even when we each individually have this experience, it still serves to be like, whoa, right? Because we're all connected to each other through our consciousness and through our feels and our connection to source. And so it is going to have an impact no matter what. And so that's going to be strong. But like I said, it's very much earlier. There was the square to Saturn, right? Where we're just like, no, I want to go my own way. Like I can fix this, right? I can fix this by just asserting myself and asserting what I know is right. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the square to Saturn is just like, it's really about the experience of this as a whole that is bringing about some sort of like authority and responsibility and some rules here, right? You're not getting out of the resonance of the collective consciousness. That's just not happening. And Saturn in its retrograde has just been like, can you handle the intensity of this? Is this like something that is going to crush you from the pressure, or is it going to strengthen your bones, right? And when I say bones, I mean really your own scaffolding energetically, which is Leo, right? It is the strength and the resonance of your own heart space and your own voice. And thankfully, Venus in the last degrees here, I mean, yes, the moon's going to square her today as well as we go through the day. But again, I think that this is sometimes this type of fixed friction like this is not necessarily a bad thing, because we may be feeling very easily pulled into kind of the noise of the current power structure, or the energy of, the thing that's so loud that's pulling everybody together into a seemingly state of, cohesion and togetherness. Might be really loud. It might be loud within you, but Venus, it's just gonna, in the body itself, it's like, nah, I'm ready for I'm full. Like I feel illuminated. And so, it challenges maybe that sound coming in, or that noise that's kind of trying to march down the street and be like, look, this is the thing that is pulling us all together. This is the power that we have. It's like a military band just like marching through the street, and everybody's like, hey, this is not in and of itself a bad thing. In fact, we're coming into Pleiadian territory. Of course, it's the opposite of the Pleiades, but it's the power. It's the true raw power of the collective, communal, cooperative relationship. And it's that Venus, and, to not forget your own heart, right? And you won't be able to. In fact, I mean, it'll be just embodied and very passionate and very, exhilarated, and possibly even just, resonating so strongly that you can't help but attract to you, this energy, right? And again, the CME that's heading towards Venus right now, man, that just seems so perfect for so much of this energy right now, especially Venus in Leo, which is the sign of our sun. So it's almost like you won't even be able to forget your own heart in this moment. It'll be so in your own feels. But the moon in Scorpio can be very, it can get real dark, real fast, especially, like Anakin Skywalker dark, right? Of just like, you know what, this is where I'm going. So then the moon is going to move into Sagittarius today. And the aspect that's actually going to be exact tonight and today, before we officially come into the 3rd of September, let's go forward here about 12 hours, right? We're going to look at tonight. Late tonight, maybe first thing tomorrow, if you're on the other side of the pond, is not only is the moon going to move into Sag, but we have this this Mercury-Jupiter opposition that is going to be exact before, before, at least on the East Coast. So in the U.S., before the day is out, this will be exact. So Mercury is in Libra. It's in its not quite in its retrograde, right? So this is the first of 3 passes that Mercury is going to make in opposition to Jupiter. So this is the first one. So Mercury is direct, Jupiter is retrograde. They're in opposition to each other. This is where the mystic rectangle really starts to form, is in this exact opposition. Now, Mercury is in a position here that is really meant to give us a way to mentally conceptualize or cognitively kind of understand here that, oh, I lost it. Hold on one second. No, it's right here. My notes. There's a reason I take them. When you come to Libra, there is an acceptance. It's got this real strong Saturnian quality, Libra does, because there's an acceptance of the material as part of the mechanism that balances, right? We achieve balance in the material through more material, right? So subjective, objective, right? Me and not me, and it's the nature of the relationship. So this moment of Mercury is really facing a lot of antagonism, and as we attempt to protect the seed that has been released into relationship. And that seed can be anything, right? It can be our own sense of self. It can literally be a seed. It can be some sort of creative pursuit. It can be a decision, right, that you've made in relationship to something else. There's an antagonism that is part of this process in Libra. And whenever you release this energy, it is also you are releasing the dichotomy of success and failure, right? And so early on, when this happens through the equinox, through the harvest, you accept, the karma of success and failure in this moment, right? You pull in your harvest and you realize what you have, and you're like, oh, some of it is molded, or all of it is good, or whatever. But there's a sense of guardianship, and the mind is going to be the agent of this guardianship. There's going to be something about, I feel like, the mental capacity or that mercurial quality that is able to not only move back and forth, infinitely and immediately through dialectic, but also has an intuitive part to itself to know, that this is about facing antagonism while also nurturing the success, right? And it's not exactly there yet. We don't know. And especially because Mercury is going to station retrograde and go back over this spot 2 more times, I would say we really don't know. We just have to accept in our mind that when a new potential is released, you automatically create a whole new branch of this could work or this could not work. And the mind here is part of this facing this antagonism, or a message, or a messenger even with Mercury. Now, opposite of Jupiter, which is also rules the sign opposite of Mercury's rulership of Gemini, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, we have Jupiter in Aries, so in another fire sign. So you see this opposition with air and fire in both of these things in terms of the planets themselves, and then also the element involved. Actually, even more to that is that Jupiter rules Pisces too, which is opposite Virgo. So you can see that all across the board here, you're talking about these agents of knowledge and understanding, right? So Mercury's got working and applying the knowledge, and the opposition or the tension here that is creating truly some sort of fulcrum of balance is Jupiter, and the big picture that is expanding within ourselves, or the big picture that maybe seems like it's contracting right now. It hasn't become any less of itself, but you push the bellows like I've talked about and the air is coming out, but it doesn't seem like, anything is there, right? And it's distorted. But this is about being in two places at once, right? It's about, those two ends coming together and realizing that right there is the potential now to, take the big breath, right? Open in the bellows, and then you get the full expansion again. And so, yes, the mind is facing this antagonism and applying this dual perspective of nurturing the seed and also, having some sort of boundary or protection or guardianship, while Jupiter is, there's this understanding within each of us as a being, as a subjective I am, right? We're talking about Aries. That's, it starts within the duality of within ourselves. And when we can understand that and we can find understanding, I think with that, in that opposition, we realize that it's not exclusively this antagonism, although it's going to seem like that, I think, with Mercury here. There's also a bigger picture here within ourselves that is about where this type of dualistic or integrative practice really starts, which is, again, within ourselves. So here we see this, by the end of today, this opposition. I have no idea what this antagonism could possibly be, but it's certainly going to present itself. Now, when we come into the third, here we do see our mystic rectangle in its pretty much in its fullness, and that also has to do with the the moon in Sag as well. So again, air signs and fire signs as well. And a mystic rectangle, you see two oppositions. There's a lot of energy and tension that is surrounded by opportunity and by balance and security in a lot of ways. So let's take a moment here to really look at this chart. So it's before we get into our third quarter or first quarter moon. It's before we get there. So this is tomorrow morning. We see this opposition, this mystic rectangle, I'm sorry. And this opposition is also Mars in Gemini, and which is ruled by Mercury. And the moon is in Sag, opposite of it, ruled by Jupiter, right? So there is a lot of this energy surrounding us about mind and understanding, right? Duality, integration, what you know, what you understand. Details, synthesis, right? These are ways you can look at it. And so knowing where these areas are in relation to your chart will give an idea of what area of life these are likely to have an impact or be showing up for you. So now we have the moon opposite Mars, and while Mars wants action, Mars wants action in particular towards like it's like forcing the balance, right? And it's like a bunch of striking workers surrounding the factory, and they're like, we're not taking it anymore, right? And Mars, boy, this is all action, no thought, right? And in Gemini, it is based on not so much thoughtfulness as much as a relationship to one side or the other. Our best case scenario here, which is the opposition with the moon in Sag, which is like there are things building under the surface here. There are alchemical processes and new elements literally being formed within us right now. And so, and realizing how much of that is within us right now. And it would be so easy to just, to lash out, to release all of this energy right there in terms of like, some sort of massive uprising, and a real strong pushback. And I'm not suggesting that this is good, this is bad. I think we know what is, what we want and what we don't want, right? And that I think can direct our intention of how this energy is used in our own personal life more than anything else. And so if you're feeling Also, that you're feeling kind of cut off from action, or you don't know where to put the action, or you feel in some ways there is something within me that is holding me back from really like stepping forward into this situation to balance something out. It's because within you feel the magma under the surface, right? New elements are forming. There is alchemical processes happening within you, and again, its relationship to Jupiter. I mean, this is perfect, right? About how, hey, it's about the integration of polarity within yourself. And sometimes that means being able to exist in two places at once, your material and spiritual self within yourself, and let it get the energy to really catalyze a real reaction. Also, too, to realize that this is not going to be the first time that Mercury is at this position. It's going to retrograde back. It's going to then cross it later. And so we have, the means in which to mentally fortify ourselves and to understand in polarity within ourselves in order to actually right here in our now, in our own conscious mind, be able to, maintain ourselves and that antagonism from the outside, whatever it is, that is going to try to attack and destroy that which we have been working so hard to create and mature and ripen and come to fruition. So it's amazing. This is a beautiful energy, I feel like, but it could very easily be used against many people, and it will, right? It definitely will, and Mars is definitely a big part of this. You're going to see activation of you're going to see activation in many ways of people who are just fed up and don't have the patience, or are not on, they're more of the second waivers. Doesn't mean that they aren't waking up. It's just that it's not even, this is just the beginning. There's something so incredibly potent boiling under the surface here to pay attention to. And this is, that's the big energy of this day, other than the fact that then the moon after this is in a square to our Virgo sun. So if we go forward, this is still Saturday morning. Here we go. So by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, we're now getting into a position where the sun is in a square to the moon, right? And this is where we have to reorganize ourselves, specifically what we're doing, a crisis in action. And when you have the moon in Sag, you're really feeling your strength. You're really feeling your strength there. Because your strength is not just coming from you, it's coming from the narrative, the myth, the value system, the thing that holds us all together belief-wise, philosophy, and the big picture. And so it's very strong here. This is the 9 of Wands in a lot of ways, especially that last, those second degrees. And this right here is where, the moon is conjunct Antares when it's square to the sun. So it may be this precision moment of snatching the veil away, right? That we are identified with, that we are expressing ourselves through. It's a very, like I said, it's a very, and we might even pay more attention to it, right? It has our attention as the sun in Virgo is just like, whoa, like just snatching the veil away in many ways. And for those of you who are following Sabian symbols, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. So, but 10 to 11 degrees Sagittarius, we are talking about conjunct the star Antares, the heart of the Scorpion. And 11 to 12, where it's actually exactly square the sun, it's basically bringing our noblest ideals forward, but as after having some sort of like conversion, some sort of transformation, some sort of, it's like enunciation, right? And enunciation really means like, bringing the message forward, making the announcement. And the announcement is really a transformation from a symbol to a living symbol of some sort in your life. And then the ability to kind of herald the dawn of a new day, right? It's all kind of brought together into one symbol. It's actually a strange Sabian symbol. Let me find it here. And then we're going to talk about the seagulls, because that's going to be really important too. It's spiritualizing and promoting, the next, the symbols of the evolution of humanity, the next stage, right? And our spiritual will and our power to rise to this highest consciousness. This is what it represents. And it really does urge us to bring these ideals to actual life. And we have to use our spiritual will in order to do it. And I think that you may find here the tension is that it's going to be a lot more satisfying, I think, in some ways, to allow the veil to be ripped in some ways. Whatever it is, you may be doing it, you may be identified with it, you may find it's very much a kind of precision oriented balancing act. It's a masculine act of balance, balancing out the feminine. And you may find yourself kind of caught up in the actual the identifying with that action in and of itself. But it's going to be very important to not lose sight of within ourselves what it's all for and where it can really lead us, and bringing our spiritual will into this process in terms of what we're doing. We're going to have to kind of reorganize ourselves by the time we get to this point. And Antares, it's a difficult place. And for those who are Antarian starseeds, you know that it's not easy to come into physical form, into materiality with this type of, very potent energy, which is the heart of the scorpion, right? Getting right at it. It stings when you have to really see things for what they are. But when you do that, there's nothing, the truth will set you free. And yeah, there may be some truth that is revealed, unveiled. It might be the thing that we really focus on, but what are we going to do with that? That is something that our own internal experience is going to start presenting to us. It won't be fully illuminated. That's for the full moon, right? That's where we're just like, oh, I feel how this has all come together into one experience, and if my inner guidance has really been on point this whole time. So that's something that we talk about with the full moon. But this, by the end of Saturday, it's going to be like, what are we going to do about it? The truth, yeah, it'll set you free, but then what? Then what? Now, the thing I want to bring up last is that the moon is going to be in a trine to Chiron by the end of Saturday, as we also see. And like I said about these trines, they are, just because they're a trine doesn't mean they're good. It just means that they are balanced, that it takes a lot to get them to be unconnected. They have such a strong connection to each other. And what we're going to find, this moon in a trine to Chiron, is a very specific degree, and it's going to be very easy for people to follow in their psyche the path of least resistance. They're going to go towards the easiest meal. And if you remember in the reading, we had the seagull, right? And this Sabian symbol for 16 degrees Sag, right, which is where it's in trine to Chiron over here. Seagulls are following like a big ship because they're in expectation of food, right? They know that the easy meal is to just follow the humans, or the big things that represent human civilization. Follow them and you will get the meal that you're looking for. It's going to be very easy to be dependent psychically. And if you think about the seagull, right, it'll be very easy to just follow that train, okay? As opposed to doing the work of your own deep healing, which means being much more in communion with the ocean, with natural, collective consciousness in the actual spiritual, soul-based realm here, and to dip in as needed for sustenance, rather than following the easy meal of what has already been established. And you know what happens when you do that? You start losing your natural instincts to get what you need from the environment. This trine with Chiron, it's going to be out of deep wounding of self, of hesitation, of not trusting ourselves, of all of those Chiron and Aries energies of just like, feeling guilt or shame for asserting ourselves, asserting our subjective experience, feeling guilty and shame for asserting our right to be. Right? And this trine, oh man, this is where people are either going to, follow that easy psychic meal from the establishment, or they're going to realize the only pathway to healing this Chiron wound is to establish my own source of sustenance, my spiritual nature, by going into these realms. And it's not easy, right? And and it's going to be right after all of this stuff on the 3rd, right? It's bam, 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 mystic rectangle, first quarter moon, and then you hit this point with the moon in Sag trine Chiron. It's just well, are you going to keep, aggravating that wound so it keeps abscessing within you, or are you going to realize your superpower here and go deeper into what the meaning really is for you, okay? And it's not going to come from the narrative on mainstream news, and we all know that. So we're at a whole new layer now, because it's not like the false false illusions, the illusions, right? It's not like they aren't sophisticated. And man, that huge chip is huge, right? It's dumping food off the side all day long, every day. And if you've ever been on if you've ever been professionally on a ship, right? If you've been in the Navy, and if you've just been on a cruise ship, that they are throwing food overboard all day long. It's what they do with their leftovers. And so again, it's pretty easy, isn't it? So when we come into Sunday, the 4th, and our moon is still in Sagittarius pretty much all day, I would say, there's a sextile to Saturn, but we're going to, and there's a trine to Venus, right? There's these air and fire connections that are favorable, but we have another mutable square, which is the moon will be in square to, Neptune and Pisces. So this is really where we're going to get, I think, tested with our inner strength and what it really is, its foundation truly is, because once it comes into square with once it comes into square here with Neptune, now we're getting pretty close to also the galactic center at this point, and a square, another mutable square with Neptune, and just, God, one of the most powerful places of cathartic purification of all of the corruption and perversion of not only just the institutions and the systems, but the very the very fabric of our consciousness, the actual the actual field itself is where Neptune is at. And so moon square here, right? 25 degrees of Sag. This is always a funny little symbol that I see often. Now, 25 degrees Sag, Sabian symbol, it's like a little chubby boy on a rocking horse. And the idea is that it's in the play of the child on the rocking horse, that there is an enjoyment of these powers that one can only as yet dream of utilizing. So that's a big part of Sagittarius, is having the space to dream and to creatively visualize and allow your imagination to expand without boundaries. Because this is where you really get into wisdom, is being able to access this realm. And the little boy on the rocking horse is enjoying the rhythm and anticipating the enjoyment of it as a grown adult, utilizing that type of rhythmic energy in a much more very real way. And the idea with the horse in general is these vital kind of sexualized energies as well. So when you're talking about these rhythmic intensities and you're talking about how do you actually integrate polarity to create something new, it's the sexual act, and reproduction is the way that physical beings do it, right? However they're doing it, right? And that's from, microbiology to plants to animals to us, right? And so the idea here in the square to Neptune in particular is that there's something here that came up about, almost getting the reality of the powers and the reality of the space in which these powers or these energy, finds culmination, or dreaming, right? There's something about the dream here that seems to almost be, disrupted. It's just like the fantasy might get disrupted because the reality of it is right here with Neptune. And yeah, it's retrograde. It's very much within us. And there's this sense here of willful ignorance at this moment, and we'll deal with Neptune in its direct motion later, because that's all going to be happening not that long from now, certainly fall into winter. We're going to definitely leading up to the solstice, all of this stuff will be moving direct again. And so then the veil of illusion and the fog of war is going to start thickening again as per usual. But right now it's kind of willful ignorance if you are still in that fog, because there is none. But what it does do is also strengthen and, broaden your intuition to a much more humanitarian, much more cosmic perspective. And so the dream and the fantasy and the internalized kind of like, yeah, this feels good. I mean, I think the square to Neptune is going to be like, the deluge comes through you and it just knocks you off, right? So that's something to consider coming through on Sunday. And I think the trine to Venus at the very last degrees, as we're going to see on Sunday, is, are you ready to, are you emotionally ready to kind of bless the unsealing in some ways, right? Venus at the last degrees of, not only have we crossed the galactic center by this point, but Venus at the last degree of Leo really is about the unsealed letter, right? That, nothing can be really hidden. And if you're trying to hide any ideas or creative expression or anything like that, you really are just, it's really senseless to be so possessive. So you can't really hide anything either. And this represents the realization by the individual that all thought and all messages are inevitably to be shared with everyone, right? This is what Aquarius, the opposite of Leo, represents. And so communication and sharing must always prevail over the will to glorify yourself by claiming sole possession of ideas and information. Venus is crossing over this, and the moon will be in a direct trine at the last degree of Sagittarius, really, sanctioning this as well. And I have to say that this is the degree of the ascendant of President Trump, is 30 degrees Leo. And so Venus rules his 10th house. His 10th house is Taurus. It's conjunct the Pleiades. Venus is going to cross his ascendant, right? He's going to have Venus Venus on his ascendant as this is happening at the end of the weekend, in a trine to the moon, which is at the very last degrees of Sagittarius, which is actually down in his 4th house, of home and family and, strong inner, power and connection. So that's just something to consider, right? Nothing can be hidden, and it is very senseless. But it's in the body, right? The body will never lie to you, ever, right? And your material reality is what it is. That will also never lie to you either. And so keep in mind that whatever kind of reactions in your body, energetically or otherwise, you may experience as Venus passes over this point, the moon in a trine is just like, you're going to feel like, are you ready to feel, and are you ready to identify personally with what this represents, right? And I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? But it is a pretty powerful weekend, I would say. And then we have like I said, Labor Day on the first Monday in September here in the United States, and that's going to be the moon moving through Capricorn. So the big news for the week leading up to our full moon, I would say, is the big things to look at are, number one, Venus enters Virgo on Monday, right? Speaking of Venus, coming into Virgo, and she, this is going to be great because she now, we're going to be able to use our magnetic, energetic physical feels and our sense of value and worth and comfort and balance and harmony in Virgo. Now, the sun has been here, and so we've been all like identified with it. Like, yes, the sun is, shining as we are patiently, but very dedicatedly, like waiting for the harvest, right? We're maturing, we're ripening, we're basking in the sunlight. It's when Venus comes into Virgo that it's going to be like, okay, now this is embodied in something that I can put my feet and hands on, or whatever it is, right? Or I can feel in my body. And then it's going to start. We're going to be really glad that this healing attunement is already well underway when this happens, I think, because this is where it's going to start actually showing up in the physical material world when Venus comes into Virgo. So that's Monday, right? While the moon is in Capricorn, things get a little serious here emotionally, and get down to brass tacks within our own emotional centers here. So Wednesday, the sun will be in a connection to, that's the 7th, right? So Monday's the 5th. We get to the 6th, pretty mellow. Wednesday, you see that the sun is connected to the nodes. And this is, again, like a pretty strong karmic confrontation here at 16 degrees Virgo, with in a trine to the North Node that is just like, our soul's evolution is really pulling us to a place that seems at first like, well, nothing that I've been doing so far, nothing that has been taught to me, none of the traditions I have been part of, nothing that has existed so far in the material world is actually working to confirm the new circumstances. And as much as that has been really hard for people, this is exactly where we are being pulled in order to evolve right now. So it's part of our ability to identify with this kind of primordial and wild part of ourselves. Like, we have to confront this as we are blending our own polarity, that we have a material self. Ooh, and isn't this part of the Chiron work? Wow. Very cool. So Wednesday, the sun is going to be in connection to the lunar nodes and making some really powerful connections to conscious acceptance of choice, confronting the karma that it brings up within ourselves, and knowing that new territory is where we are going, because otherwise, we can't rely on what has already been there. And there is a power in consciously accepting our relationships with choice and openness. So, and that is like some of the best that Scorpio has to offer, is like what we can really accomplish and do together. It's so much bigger than just ourselves individually. A relationship forms a third energy, right? So this is why I do the Starseed synastry readings right now, because there are composite charts of, star seeds that show this as well. So this is Wednesday. Thursday, we are looking at, again, it's kind of mellow on Thursday. These connections, right? The sun with the nodes. Lilith is now in Leo, right? It's finally coming out of Cancer, where it's been just volleying back and forth between Sirius, the star Sirius, and Procyon. So now it's coming into Leo, which is going to bring up a lot of the Orion energy in particular in different ways. So we'll talk about that later. But just to kind of give an idea of Lilith and what starseed connections are relevant to her current positions now. It's all sextile to Orion, and certainly a trine to Antares when she gets to 10 degrees Leo. So Friday is when Mercury stations retrograde, right? 9 degrees Libra. And this is about, a mental kind of conceptualization here of, what is that threefold picture of balance and equilibrium that we'll return to in a state of chaos. It's really important that we establish this on some level for ourselves, or at least give our mind the opportunity to receive this message and visualize it, I think, so that we know when things are really starting to, hit the fan in different ways in our lives, that we return back to this image or this, this type of knowledge that we can apply to our mental and cognitive functions here and our everyday consciousness, so that we can achieve balance for ourselves. So Mercury stations retrograde on Friday the 9th, and the 10th is when we have our full moon in Pisces. So here, let's look at it exact, shall we? And we know September 11th is a big deal here in the U.S. And really, it has a cascading effect on the world. It was the World Trade Center, right? And so that's something to consider when you think about that event. So here it is. Here's our full moon in Pisces, opposite the sun in Virgo. We also have Lilith and Jupiter in a trine as well. We also see that the moon, at some point will... at this point, actually, is in a sextile. This full moon is in a sextile to Uranus. And so it also is, there's also some potential here with this really kinetic energy, even in its retrograde, this inner kinetic energy to have, to really activate this sense of cohesion and experience of oneness. This is where this full moon is really going to give us a very full and saturated and very, very compassionate and unifying experience. And coming from this identification with our own inner guidance and the ability to really follow that guidance with some discernment and knowing what's down there, right? The Sabian symbol for 18 Virgo is very interesting. It's a Ouija board. And we know that these practices, the Ouija board, the tarot, the Kabbalah, they're all these esoteric mystery school occult practices that have been that are dangerous if they're misused and exploited, or people find themselves using them before they are even remotely trained and educated to establish boundaries. And that's why it's a board game. It pulls people into that space and having them tap into entities without any astral hygiene whatsoever. But if you think about it in terms of, it's not the board game, it's not the cards, it's the window or the opening, there is something profoundly powerful about having access to your own inner guidance, but the discernment. And this full moon, we will be able to feel. It'll be really very potent and powerful and very emotional, probably. And very much in the dreamscape, possibly, of this inner guidance, right? And I think we might even, who knows, you might be getting some intense dreams leading up to this moment that will establish, like, okay, is this experience all bullshit? Is it a total, operation? Or is there something of real significance here that we are all experiencing together? It's really going to depend on, what that inner guidance is for you and what your astral hygiene has been so far. Because that's the light that's going to shine on your soul. And you'll be able to really feel if this is all bullshit or not. So, and I'm not saying that's like forever and ever, but this full moon is really going to give a good indication. So, and that is Saturday, the 10th. So we'll certainly be talking about this on Monday at the ministry, Starseed Ministry. We will have our stream on the 9th as well, and we'll go deeply into the full moon and what to expect on the other side of it, of course. And if you are a Pisces sun, moon, or rising person, you may want to consider one of those lunar transit forecasts at the sale rate. Like I said, description box below has everything you need. If you go to the website, everything is there, and you can find what you need to get you to where you want to go, for sure. So I'm going to see if there's anything else that is coming up for people. How are you all doing? It sounds like people are just listening, and that's really great, and just taking it all in. So let me know if you need anything, if you're interested in the Reiki healing attunement. Like I said, everything is accessible through my website. Or you can email me at catalystenergies@gmail.com if you're interested in getting on board with that. Join us on Facebook or Telegram if you want to be part of the conversation and comment on your own experiences of the attunements as we go along. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I really, truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much for your own devotion to yourself, your own commitment to, New Earth and the process of getting there in as much of a one piece as we can, and for taking care of yourself as best you can, which means you will take care of each other that are, the people around you whom you love and you cherish. You will just by default take better care of them when you take care of yourself. And if there was ever a Virgo message, I feel like that would be it. So have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy the mystic rectangle of the 3rd. I will see you on Monday for the Starseed Ministry. Love you guys. Bye.